and listening to like, oh, this guy trains with Dusty, he's strong. He's lifting, 8 plates on the hack. It's like, but that's not who I am. I guess the thing is that, but you could be. I think that a lot of us could be a lot stronger than we give ourselves credit for, is what it comes down to. What's up, guys? Welcome back to Think Big Bodybuilding Media. I'm Scott Mcnally, and today I'm here with Tommy Stiles. If you guys have been watching the programs, or I should say listening to the programs for a long time, Tommy, we had you on, that had to be like 3 years ago now, was it?
Yeah, it was the fall of 2017, I think. Or I was getting ready for shows in 2017, so yeah, it was somewhere in there. Okay,
and then we ended up meeting. So Tommy and I are both from Detroit. We ended up meeting out at Grand Rapids for the Western Michigan, and we both competed at that show, which was cool. Actually, I stayed with you at your room. By the way, thank you again for your hospitality. I appreciate that. And since then, man,
sleepover. It was a good time.
Yeah, I hardly remember it because there was like so much. There's so much that goes into a show. All I remember is like at the end of the night, I just passed the F out, and I was ready to sleep. But it was a good time, man. But I look back at that, and for both of us, I feel like a lot has changed. I kind of took a couple years of not progressing as hard, but this last year, I've really taken a lot of the things I've learned, and I've been applying it to myself. And you never stopped. You've been pushing. You've made some tremendous progress since 2017. Not to mention, you moved out to Arizona, and you've been working with Dusty, and now you're one of his training partners. You guys probably recognize Tommy. If you haven't seen him before, if you weren't one of the old school OG listeners of Advices, you've probably seen him, spotting Dusty or something. So we're going to talk about training today. We're going to basically create a case study of what our back training looks like and share with you the insights that we've developed. And hopefully you guys will pick something up out of this. So I've been looking forward to doing this with you for a while, man.
Yeah, no, you and I talk regularly about this kind of thing, and I'm glad we're getting together to kind of put it out there for people and see if we can help them out.
Yeah, me too. So where do we start? Because we kind of talked and game planned this a little bit. Before we actually get into the exercises, what was the word you used?
I can't take credit for it, but it's potentiation.
Okay.
Potentiate the muscle that you're going to be training that day.
Okay. And what does that mean exactly? Yeah.
So it's basically, not to get scientific, but I look at it as like you're basically that's your primer. You're getting some blood into the area that you're going to be working. You're establishing a connection between your mind and that muscle. So for what we're going to be talking about, it's mind-muscle connection, a big part of it. And as bodybuilders, we're not trying to move weight from A to B. We're trying to stretch and contract weight from a starting point to a finishing point. So you need to be in tune with your body. I kind of said this to you before we started recording, is that a proper bodybuilding training session is as much of a mental stress as it is a physical stress.
Yeah.
Because you have to be so in tune for every rep, every set, from start of the workout to the end of the workout. So that all starts with how you get warmed up, how you get yourself in that zone to train. And we're not talking about intensity at this point. We're just talking about like, all right, so we're talking about back today. How do I get connected with my lats? For me, I might do some band work, just some like put a band around an object right in front of me and do some standing rows, just drawing some blood, kind of like you'd pump up for a show.
Yeah.
Backstage. That's kind of like what potentiation work is for me, to a degree. I might do some behind the neck pull downs, just to get things moving, just to see, all right, where am I tight? What do I need to focus on?
Yeah.
To get warmed up, shoulders. Every day is different. There's no real like thing I do every time I go in, but it's just kind of like a little 10-minute thing I do to get, just to get the body and the mind where it needs to be.
Yeah, I used to for now, and I started right after that contest in 2017. I brought my pictures to the guys at Muscle Minds, which at the time that was Dr. Scott Stevenson and Jordan Peters were both on that show, and we talked about the areas I wanted to bring up. and back was one of the big ones. And it was really kind of developing just more width to the lats, really. Like the density, the rhomboids were okay, but I wanted to develop more lat, and I felt like the lats weren't activating well. So Scott's suggestion was to maybe do a pullover first. And so for about a year straight, that's all I did was like I'd start with the pullover, and it wasn't even like a heavy working exercise. It's more about what you're talking about, where I'd just try to get some blood in the muscle and try to get the lats activated. And that way, then when I went, I'd go to a pull down next or a pull up. And when I got there, I already had blood in the lat, and it felt like it was easier to contract. I feel like one of the reasons that the muscle didn't grow well was because I had a hard time like learning how to contract it. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of times that's the issue for people with a weak body part. Like hamstrings for me used to be weak, and guess what? I couldn't contract them very well either.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think if a weak body part is usually one that struggles to be activated altogether.
Yeah.
It might be weak strength wise too, but you're also probably only activating half as much as you potentially could be. So
yeah, so I get where you're coming from, and I get what you mean too about how it changes. Having tore my shoulder this last year, now I'm really aware of my shoulders, any upper body work that I'm getting into, and I may take the Theragun to them. You know, I may even do some mobility type work just to get blood in my shoulders to start. But outside of that, depending on how I'm feeling, I don't do too much to really get started other than just get into my exercise now. That said, I start really light, and I use that exercise to warm up, and I ask myself like, okay, am I contracting? I want to keep visually doing this, by the way, as I'm talking. Like it's in my brain right now. I want to, but that's what I want to do is I want to try to focus on connecting to the muscle that I'm trying to activate. How am I sitting? What's my arm, look like as it's coming down? What's the angle look like? What's contracting, that kind of thing. And like I said, I start really light, but then I slowly began to work into it.
Mm-hmm. No, I think so. We both are on the same page. We're just trying to get our mind into the muscle and get blood into the muscle before we get into the actual working sets. So starting us out then, getting into the workout, what would be the first exercise that you would use for back? I always start with a width movement.
Okay.
Something for width. So you mentioned pullovers. If I have the option, if the gym has it, which our gym just got one, it's a pullover machine.
Yeah.
So we have the Hammer Strength Nautilus or the Hammer Strength pullover.
Yeah.
We've been opening up with that, and Dorian did that his whole career, and success leaves clues. He had a pretty good back, so
yeah.
I like a pullover just because it's the only movement that activates the lats that doesn't activate biceps too.
That's true.
Because it's you're coming straight down and over.
Yeah.
So we'll open up with that, and with that one, I actually like to let my elbows flare out.
Okay.
And my elbows aren't actually on the pads of that machine. Every pullover machine's a bit different.
Yeah.
But I just hold on to the bar, and my elbows actually aren't in contact with the pads.
Huh.
So if the biggest thing for people to realize, like, you can swing that machine down and up, and not even be activating your lats. So you have to actually, what I teach people to do is contract your lat all the way down without even being on the machine, just as I am now, and then emulate that when you're on the machine with the load that you're going to use.
Yeah.
And over time, that mind muscle will enhance, and then you won't even be able to do a pullover without contracting your lat after you get used to it.
Yeah. So you get into these working sets. How long does that take? Like, walk me through, I guess, from the time you get to this pullover machine to the time you're actually getting to the working weight. Because I feel like that's something that we skip over a lot of times. And I find that some of my clients are confused as to what they need to do to get to that first working set.
Yeah. I think the reason people get confused and it's hard for us to explain is because it's never concrete. Some days you might need more than others, and others you might need less. So for me, typically it's because there's two places to rack weights on the pullover machine. So I put 245s on, then I put 445s on, then I put 345s on, and then a working set will be 445s or 445s on each side. Okay. So 8 total. That'll be my working set. I'll try to get 12, and then Dusty will force me through a couple extra, give or take. For working or warm-up sets, I either do it one of two ways. It's either they're all straight sets of like 10 to 12 reps, same amount, just to like, so I guess those would kind of be feeder sets.
Yeah.
Or I warm up in this, and we've talked about this, I warm up where it's like 10 reps, then when I add weight, I'll drop to like 6 to 7 reps. Then when I add weight, I'll drop to like 4 to 5 reps. So your reps are decreasing as your weight's going up, just trying to conserve energy and strength for that working set. So those are the two ways I'll use to warm up. It just depends on what what movement we're doing.
Yeah, that's I think that's where I think it really does take experimenting. Like you said, it's never going to be quite the same. It depends on the day too. You know, some days you walk in and you're feeling strong. Other days, and I think too, like for me, I don't know if age plays a role. I think age does play a small role to it. I think also strength plays a role, because the stronger you are, the longer it could take to get to the heavy weight, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with that. I mean, I watched Dusty does 8 warm-up sets before he gets to a working set, just because he's working with such high loads.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it is dependent. Whereas, like, you know, some of my clients, I'll program for them, and I have to take into account that they might only need 1 warm-up set to be at a working weight.
Yeah.
So the concept I give or the description I give might not meet where they're at in their journey yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think there's, you know, we had talked before, not on this show, but we had talked before about, and I've said this on other programs, I think there's 2 aspects to warming up. And that is the you know, the literal, like getting blood into the muscle, getting your joints warmed up, you know, feeling it. But then I think there's also that central nervous system component that, you know, we've all lifted a weight for, we'll say, you know, X amount of reps, that first working set. And then we go back to do the same set again, and it feels lighter that second time, you know. It's that central nervous system aspect that I feel like that needs to be keyed up, in getting that marriage right of getting your central nervous system and the muscle warmed up, getting your body warmed up, and still having all of the, like, everything left in the tank, you know, not burning yourself out too soon. Cause we don't want to do, you know, 50 for 10, 60 for 10, 70 for 10, and then go to 80 for a working set for 10, because, you know, obviously you're not going to get as much as you could have. At the same time, it's finding that balance where you save into the tank, but you don't get hurt and you're ready. You know, it's all those things, I guess, combined. Maybe that's why it's hard to put that out there as to what a warm up should look like.
Yeah, because I think it's just something you're constantly adapting, and it's evolving as you learn your body more. You know, there's days where, like, a working weight I planned doesn't end up happening because I'm stronger that day. And, you know, I'll do 2 reps with it and I'll just rack it, and I'll just tell Dusty, yeah, I need to go up.
Yeah.
I'm stronger today. Or on the flip side, I've went in days I thought I was going to get to a certain point and, like, no, not today. So you just have to, you know, you just adjust. You're kind of calling an audible. It doesn't mean you're going to have a bad session. It just means you have to be in tune with your body. If it's not there, you can't force it on that given day.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I've been mostly starting with a pull down lately.
Okay.
And I've been doing things differently. I don't know if you saw the videos I've recently been posting, but I feel like my pull down, I don't think it did a lot for me in the past. And I think that was part of the issue, that I feel like I was, and I can't even tell you exactly what I was doing, but I know I was pulling to, like, the top of my chest, almost to my neck, really. And I feel like I was probably activating, like, teres and possibly rear delts, you know, and upper back. Right. And I wasn't getting those lats. I found I've almost I get like a pull over action almost in the pull down, where I keep my elbows. I think it's I was talking to Dave Smith about this, and I think it's the path of my elbows. I keep them in closer now, more in front of me, and I pull down to, like, the solar plexus, even with, like, an overhanded bar.
I saw that video you posted. It actually does, now that you mention it, it does mimic a pullover, the way your lats are moving.
Yeah.
I think the traditional pullover, even that bar is like everyone they grab as wide as they can.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know what your experience is, but it just ends up pulling on my bicep if I get too heavy of a weight, and I don't actually feel anything for the lats.
Yeah, I could see
so
that.
when I do them the way you posted, I might not, the load might not be as impressive, but it's all lat from start of the movement to finish. So I prefer that way for lat pull downs, the way you're doing them.
Every time I'm exercising, to me, it's almost like a physical therapy where I'm trying to train this to contract better each workout. So I guess the things I'm focusing on that, and you can tell me if you feel this way, I'm leading you because I know you do, but I try to get a really good contraction, and I try to be honest in controlling the negative as best I can. I've seen your pullovers, and I feel like you guys are really controlling the negative all the way through. I feel like, to me, that's something that I don't think I focused on soon enough, but I feel like it's a game changer.
Yeah, no, I've learned a ton about negatives just from doing DC before and with Dusty. And then anything you've ever seen Dorian talk about or seen in his videos was all about the negatives, building the mass of the muscle. And I think it's easy not to do in the beginning of our careers because it's harder. It sucks. And it's not, you have to check your ego to be able to do proper negatives. And then once you get strong with proper negatives, that's even more impressive. Like, explosive concentrics is cool. I mean, I'll always appreciate that. But if someone can control a weight from start to finish, to me that's pure bodybuilding right there.
Yeah.
So I'm on the same thinking as you. If I can't control the weight, I mean, obviously there's going to be a degree where, you're going to use a little English with certain movements. We do need to build muscle. This isn't like your form shouldn't be so strict that you don't ever get strong.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be so sloppy that it's, we're just moving weight for the sake of moving weight. That's just not what bodybuilding is.
Yeah. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of the guys that I work with where we work on exercise technique. I start them out with a really controlled negative, and I feel like that to me is the foundation, and that after you can really get that down, then maybe you can start to loosen up a little bit. It's like you can control a negative and still bring it, still let it up pretty quickly. It's just a matter of, like, I think that learning the rules before you bend them. You know what I mean?
Right. That's a good point. I mean, I can't tell just by how someone's doing a movement if they're in control or not. Like, if you watch old videos of like Jay Cutler, Jay wasn't really slow with the negatives, but I guarantee he had a connection to his muscle the whole time through. You know what I mean? Like, if you're a seasoned veteran and like you know what speed you can control your the negatives at, it doesn't have to be like creeping up, 5 count negatives. For me, I have to have that slow count for most exercises just to keep that mind muscle intact, or it just ends up I lose the point of the exercise. So if I don't do the pullovers in that slow manner, even though I've been doing them for a long time, like the tension, I can feel it mentally. It's not on the lat anymore. And then it shifts to my elbows, and now I'm just getting tendonitis from driving downward instead of pulling with the lat. So it's all it's individual. It's all about your experience with it.
So you actually use like a tempo? You'll do like what'd you say, a 5 count?
Yeah, everything's different. So for most stuff, it's a 4 count.
Okay. That's
a lot of what DC is, at least the way Dusty programs it now. For anybody that gets DC training from him, it's a lot of 4 count stuff.
Yeah.
Which is just it's a count. It's just a method to like a cadence to go to. It's kind of just like a tempo. Like if you were tapping your foot, it's not seconds. It's not like you don't have to live and die by it. Like it's not life or death if you don't, you know what I mean? It's just a tempo to kind of like, almost like a rhythm to stick to.
Yeah. So how does that go? Like, actually do it for me. Like, tell me, is it like 1, 2, 3, 4?
Of the rep,
yeah.
At the top of the rep before a pullover, that's so you're going to go down, do your rep. On the way, once you start from the point of your contraction on the way up, it's 4, 3, 2, 1. By the time you get to 1, you're going back down.
Okay. Yeah.
So that
I like
it's
that.
just meant to make you control that negative. That's all it is. It's not like I have to hold this for 4 seconds. Like 4 seconds on a clock is a
It's a long
crazy
time.
long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of us would be doing the weights we were doing if we were actually doing seconds.
I've been using 3 seconds for a lot of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that's pushing it, I think, because sometimes you'll think like 3 seconds. It's when you get to 3, but 3 seconds is when you get to the end of 3. So it's like when you say 3, that's the beginning of the third second. So it's more like
Right.
1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, end. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's a long time, but I feel like lately I've been loosening up on that a little bit, but I think it took me doing that for a long time to be able to get it, if that makes sense.
No, I get it. Trust me, I'm the same way. I almost had to overcompensate with my negatives just to learn the tension on the muscle and to get that mind muscle established.
Yeah.
And now I can, I have a little bit more leeway, but
Yeah. So you've got that first set you've done now with the pullover. Is that it, or do you guys do any more?
So that first, we'll either do a back down set and just pull a couple plates, and that'll be a higher rep range. So if that first set was 8 to 12, that second set will be 12 to 15 with a lower weight. Some days, this is where it's like, I guess, not saying we go by feel, but some days we'll just do a double drop set.
Okay.
And then, because we don't train with a lot of volume, so almost everything we does has an intensifier added. So it'll either be a double drop set, or we'll rest pause that top weight set, which we'll do a traditional DC rest pause, where our goal is to get 15 to 20 reps total for the whole 3 rounds.
Okay.
And then take 30 to 35 seconds in between rounds.
Okay.
But I would say for the most part, what we're doing is that the way I described first, the top set, back off set for that opening exercises of pullovers.
I feel like those back off sets can be even more brutal sometimes because you've got it in you to eke out another one.
Yeah. Well, I find myself too, it's like because you've done something heavier to start, that weight feels super light. So I think at that point you can even get more sadistic with your negatives to make it hurt even more because that weight's not heavy enough. Because like I'll get to like 8 reps in sometimes, and I'm like, I'm going to overshoot this rep range by 20 if I don't slow this down even more.
Yeah.
And then I can almost make myself tap out when it gets to that point at the end of the rep range.
I think that's something that takes time to learn too. That's something that we say it all the time too on the shows about learning to make a weight harder. And that's exactly it right there. We when I trained with Shelby, we were following some programming that Jordan Peters had written, and that was the first time where my first set was the heaviest set. It was a learning experience because we would hit that first set and shoot for 10, and if you could get 10, then you'd use the same weight. If you couldn't get 10, then you'd back off by 10% on that second. And exact same thing, using a pull down as an example, because that's where we would start a lot of times. You take 10% off of your heaviest weight. And yeah, at first, that first 2-3 reps, you're like, oh yeah, this is easier. And you can really control it. But man, that gets freaking brutal quick.
Yeah, it catches up.
One thing I want to talk about with Scott Stevenson, I'm going to ask him on the next Muscle Minds, is about conditioning the central nervous system. Because I feel like the sets we're talking about, I couldn't have done that at a certain point. Like, we're always redefining what intensity is and what a real hard set is. But I feel like, and I'm sure it's the same for you, that like my ability to do something that's absolutely like just unbelievably painful has increased. It's like I'm able to handle a lot more pain. The tolerance is higher now than it was a year ago. Yeah,
I agree with that. I think the same thing. I think a lot because it is mental. I keep talking about mental, but it's like you have to be so mentally in tune with the exercise you're doing. I think the common reaction when you feel pain somewhere, not like I'm not talking negative pain, but like the pain from training.
Yeah.
is to stop or to run away from it. But I think of that scene in Fight Club where he has the chemical burn on his hand, and he tells him like, this is your pain. Don't run away from it. Like I think of that, and I try to put myself in whatever muscle I'm working. I try to put myself inside of that muscle and like feel what I'm feeling. It's weird to explain, but I can't run away from whatever I'm feeling. Like you have to almost like uncomfortably comfortable basically. Because the working set's only going to last a minute.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is withstand a minute of uncomfortableness to grow.
Yeah.
So it's a fair trade-off in my mind, but I agree with you. I think over time, especially the more in tune you get with your body, you set new standards for yourself of what pain really is.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you've pushed that far. I mean, I've seen since you've moved out there, the weight you're moving has really increased. Like I saw you doing a hack squat the other day, just like loaded up. I mean, you've progressed a lot in your strength. Would you ever imagined that because I feel like I'm seeing myself get stronger. There was a time that I wouldn't have thought of myself as somebody that would be as strong as I am today. Would you have thought that you would be doing what you're doing now?
No.
How about 3 years ago? How about 3 years ago when we were at the Western?
No. I mean, that's what's funny is like then I remember hack squatting in that prep, and I was doing 3 plates aside.
Yeah.
To get ready for that show, and like that was, if I could holding on to strength meant doing 3 plates aside for me at that time in my career. But I don't think I had never just taken the time to figure out the things we're talking about, negatives and mind muscle and just really getting down to the nitty gritty of it. I had some injuries that I was working around that I still work around just based off my body. Cause I've seen it. I saw guys on Instagram then, and I see them now, and I'm like, maybe I'll never get to that level of strength. But yeah, the other day I had 8 plates aside on the hack squat, and for me, that's crazy. That's strong for me. So, I never would have thought I'd have that on my back.
Yeah.
But small jumps. I mean, it didn't happen overnight. It's been just consistency.
I guess I kind of wanted to bring that up too, because, the people watching may be in the position that you or I was in 3 years ago, and listening to like, oh, this guy trains with Dusty, he's strong. He's lifting, 8 plates on the hack. It's like, but that's not who I am. I guess the thing is that, but you could be. I think that a lot of us could be a lot stronger than we give ourselves credit for, is what it comes down to.
I think everybody has the ability to be strong. It just might not be, Dusty Hanshaw strong.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's kind of in his own world.
Yeah.
But there's no reason each individual can't find what their max output is for a given anything in life.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to remember is like, use what you see Dusty doing as inspiration, but don't by no means, use it as a measure to compare yourself to, because
you would be very depressed seeing it every day.
Strong. Yeah.
Yeah. You would be very depressed, I'm sure, seeing it every day. And you're like, oh, I'm not that. Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, we're doing this. At least for myself, I'm equating making progress in muscle growth to getting stronger, It's like getting stronger is great, but the reason I'm doing it is because the ultimate goal for me is to gain more size.
Right. I mean, I've said before, a stronger muscle is a bigger muscle.
Yeah.
So if you can add little bits of strength month to month, year to year, it does add up. It's just about not getting discouraged in the moment of something. If like, you bomb a set, you have a bad workout, like that's one. You have 50 more in the year to do, you know what I mean? With that body part.
Just don't do anything stupid.
Don't get hung up on one bad session. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like it is easy to do that. There's so many other things we could talk about, but I'll stay on track here with the workout. So you have your top set, possibly a back off set with your pullover. Where do you guys go to next?
Thickness movement. So it would be for us, just because we didn't have a lot of toys up until recently. Our gym got like 5 new pieces. It's been barbell work, which actually showed me a lot about how little you really need to develop a body part, especially for back. Because I've been fortunate my whole career really to have gyms that had pretty good hammer strength pieces and just back toys in general. And then, lockdown out here happened. The gym that we were at that had all those toys was closed. We only had access to the gym we train at now, and we were fortunate to even have access to a place. But all we had was a barbell, cables, and one hammer strength machine that really, it's one of the high rows, and it's not my favorite piece.
Yeah.
So for the better part of 4 months, every back workout involved either a Mcnally row, or just a dead stop row, or a traditional bent over barbell row. One of the 3 every week.
Okay. Did you see the episode we did with our Sean Clarita? And he was saying he was locked down with not very much, just real big, basic exercises, and look what he did with it, right?
Yeah, I think that's the thing is I love some of these hammer strength pieces and Arsenal, Atlantis, all the brands. I love some of those back pieces. I think you can really learn mind muscle connection well on those pieces. But I think if you 100% rely on those and get away from barbells and dumbbells, you're doing yourself a disservice, because back is all gravity.
Yeah.
And I think there's something to be said about a back that's held 315, 405 in your hands and rode it or deadlifted it, one of the two. You know what I mean? I think there's a look that you have that you don't have if you don't do those things.
Yeah, no question. So you guys are at this movement now, probably like a barbell row type movement. How does that warm up look?
That warm up would be the second one I described. It would be as the weight pyramids, the reps decrease. So 135 for 8 reps, 225 for 6. I'll probably touch 275 for 4, 315 for 3, and then 365 would be my working set.
Okay. And
then working sets anywhere from 6 to 10.
Okay.
And then that one will do a back down set of 10 to 15.
How does that movement? Go ahead.
No, what are you gonna ask?
No. I'll get back to it. I won't forget.
Okay. So yeah, the back down set's 10 to 15, and for me, if the top set's 365, then the back down set would probably be 315.
Okay, so decent amount backed off, but that's still brutal, man.
Yeah, I always tell people the back up set, there's no rules. I mean, you just have to. Tell them to pick a weight that fits that rep. You're still training to failure, but you're training to failure in the rep range. That's what changes is the rep range. You're still training to failure.
Yeah.
It just, you have to fail at that. I don't want to fail at 8 if my minimum is 10. You know what I mean?
How long would it take you guys to get to that first working set? Now, you're obviously kind of warmed up because you were over on the pullover, so you're not 100% new now coming into this exercise.
Probably, like I said, only 4 or 5 warm-ups.
Okay. And time-wise, is that, 15 minutes or?
Yeah, I'd say 15. I mean, we're not real sticklers on the clock.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon for Dusty to walk and go to the bathroom and then go put chalk on. And then, I've never timed a rest interval in my life. You know what I mean? We go when we're ready. And he's big on that. He won't rush me. If he's ready to go, he still won't rush me. And
nice.
Vice versa. Because we have so little volume, you know what I mean? We only do 3 or 4 exercises a day. So
yeah,
what are we going to do? Max of 8 working sets?
Yeah, I guess that's an important thing that's why I wanted to kind of get a picture of how long that took. Mm-hmm. I guess to hear that you don't ever rush it is what you're telling me. Yeah.
Yeah, the warm-ups, I would say, it takes us about 20 minutes, maybe 20 to 25 to get to, just because we're bouncing back and forth. But, yeah, 20 to 25 to get to that set, and then 2 sets there, and then on to the next.
What's he rowing right now?
Anywhere from 455 to 495.
Did you see that video that Palumbo did of him?
Yeah,
he was on the muscle in the morning. That was cool to see.
Yeah, I like when Dave does that.
Yeah, that was cool. What did he say? He had like a doctorate or something like that, a master's degree in
masters in moving weight.
Yes, yeah, which he does, man. He's been doing that for a long time now.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, for back day, we literally did no more than 5 movements for 5 months straight before we got these toys.
So I may do a barbell row. I'm still trying to get good at them. I feel like that's one of the exercises it feels kind of iffy with my low back still. So if I do a barbell row, I can't handle as much volume. I can't handle as much weight, so I end up having to do more volume. So for me, it's not a perfect example of an exercise I use. I'm really into the dumbbell rows, and I have enough weight in my basement that even training at home, I can really challenge myself. The thing I've been experimenting with is how far bent over I am. You know, I've heard a lot of times, and I've experimented with, if you're standing like a little bit more upright, some people are saying you can hit more low lat. If you're bent over completely, you know, you can't cheat it at all. You're not hitting any trap that way. I'm kind of leaning toward more of a completely bent over position at this point. Where are you guys at as far as how far lean forward you are with your barbell row?
Are you talking about a traditional barbell row or one off the ground?
I guess in general, do you guys gravitate to one angle more than another?
I would say for a traditional one, I'm not like 90 degrees from the hip. You know what I mean? I'm probably more like, I'm a little more upright, but I do try to keep my torso over the bar at least.
Okay.
Even if there is a little English with the pull from the bottom.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Like I said, it can't be 100% strict, but if I'm like if the first point of the movement is me jerking and then rowing, that's too much weight.
Yeah.
And I see that a lot. I think I still struggle with the traditional barbell row. I'm actually stronger from the ground than I am with the barbell row.
Really?
Just because of it's just easier for me. I think I can engage my muscle better and I can slow it down. With the weight hanging like a traditional barbell row, I can lose tension on where I want it for some reason. I don't know if I'm just built better from the ground with my leverages, but I've always pulled better from the ground. But yeah, I don't think you have to be 90 degrees, but I think if you're 75 degrees, you're too high. And at that point, you're just moving weight. You're not contracting.
I feel like, to me, this is the hardest part of the workout that we're talking about right now. Either you on the barbell row, me on the dumbbell row. This is the part that I find to be the most taxing and the part that I have to really give the most. Like, obviously, you're giving everything you have on that pullover or on my pull down, but I feel like this is going to be, the meat and potatoes of it.
I agree. I think you're getting a lot of CNS too, because you're on the pullover, the pull down, you're seated. Everything's fixed. On this, you have to, because the stabilizer muscles are working too. The glutes are firing because they're stabilizing. The hips are pushed back. The hamstrings are being innervated. I mean, the core's tight. It taxes the whole body, really.
Yeah,
this one requires a lot of mental fortitude, that this exercise of the workout.
Yeah, it does. And I feel like this is the point where I need to be able to give my all. It's a weird spot. No matter where I was coming into the workout, at this point, I feel like this is where you're 100% focused. This is the point of the workout I love the most. It's intense. I can't even put it into words, but.
No, I agree with you. This is why you showed up today, is for this exercise alone.
Yeah. And do you
feel that do you feel that having done that first exercise makes you stronger for this exercise?
I don't feel like it takes away from it.
Okay, that's what I was going to get at, is I feel like I'm not as strong if we were to open with this movement
Hmm.
versus opening. I need that one movement that's not going to tax me mentally,
Hmm.
but gets my body moving fully. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
for some reason, I can't go to where I need to go mentally for a movement like this or a hack squat or anything that requires, all in mental output.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
can't open with it. For some reason, I do better if it's second or third.
I think you're right. I think you're right because I have opened with my dumbbell row, and it took me a lot longer to get where I needed to be. It took a lot longer to warm up. So, and I mean, I could have probably have done a pull down or a pull over first and still made the same amount of time. So yeah, and that's interesting. That's something I never thought about before. But yeah, I totally agree with you actually.
Yeah, that's just something I noticed myself. I didn't know if more people saw it too, but it's definitely I lose strength if I open with those big movements.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wonder if there's anything we can explain to people that might help them in this, because I feel like the pull down, I'm pretty good at explaining what I'm doing. Like I said, it's kind of it's almost like a pull over at the bottom. I'm getting a really good contraction in the lat. It's like the barbell row or the dumbbell row. It gets a little bit less black and white because there's so much moving. It's like your whole back is being activated. Everything you need to stabilize is being activated. Your breathing is important in all of this. And you're trying to control your body and keep it in the position you want it. How do you focus on getting the contraction that you want?
Yeah, it's a tough one to put into words.
Yeah, it's hard to
I
explain.
guess the biggest part is and you can try to elaborate on this if I do a bad job on it, but is to always be pulling with the back first. I think if you're initiating, so for me, at least with rows, the biggest thing is to bend the bar. So just that little subtle bend of the bar activates your lat. If anybody does that, grab a bar, slight twist, and your lat engages.
I like that. I've never used that before.
I have to do that, or else without bending the bar, I feel like I'm pulling with my biceps from the bottom rather than my back. So that's something I do, bend the bar, and then I noticed this from the ground when I watch my videos back, is you can almost see me like almost tuck my elbows and then pull versus staying 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Because I think with a 90-degree arm trajectory, you're going to get rear delt, rhomboid, upper trap.
Sure.
You're gonna get those things with to a degree if you have the elbows tucked, but if the goal is lats and mid back, I think you gotta have those lats activated by getting tension on them before you even start a rep.
Yeah, I agree with that. Something that Shelby had us do that I still do today is I pull low. I'm basically dragging the bar across my thighs as I bring it up. I try to keep my elbows in, and I basically try to like pull toward the groin. I try to focus on like below the navel,
Okay. I'm the same way. I pull really low. And I think, at least for me, it doesn't always touch my stomach. I've had people ask me if it has to like touch you pull all the way to your stomach. Like, I don't think you have to go that high. If you're at max contraction where where it stops, then you don't have to go further. You know what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, I think it does. Now that I'm fatter, it's easier to touch my stomach. I can tell you that much. But
yeah,
I do. I try to bring it all the way up, but I'm, like I said, it's an exercise for me that I'm not moving as much weight as you are. I don't feel as confident with the barbell row. So that's why for me, it's like I said, like I'll be doing 3 sets and I'll probably use the same amount of weight, possibly even back off on the third one. It's an exercise that's more like a practice movement for me. Though I do, what about now? I know you guys don't do a lot of dumbbell, but if you were to use a dumbbell, do you bring the dumbbell all the way up?
Yeah, I would. It's hard I can't picture where I pull it to, but For me, I just know where my max contraction is for that body part before I start twisting or jerking. I guess that's what I'm trying to get at, is like your range of motion is only going to be as much as your mobility allows.
Yeah.
So with a dumbbell, I only pull as high as I can go without twisting.
Yes.
I'm pulling from the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If the goal is lat. So I guess I just kind of gauge it off that. Like, where's the end point for the muscle that I'm working versus how does it look? It might actually look like a partial rep to an outsider, but it's a full range of motion for that muscle in that exercise.
I feel like the same is true with the stretch, that the lat is only going to stretch so far. And I see a lot of people that will give it like their whole body starts twisting down. And I think that's unnecessary too.
Yeah, and it's unnecessary. And I think if you're having shoulder issues, you have to look at something like that, because it's pulling on the cap of the shoulder.
Sure.
Letting that weight basically pull your shoulder out.
Yeah.
And then pulling it back. So you're basically creating a lot of trauma to the shoulder by doing that.
Yeah. All right. Anything else we should cover on this exercise?
No, it's a pretty meat and potatoes. There's obviously some little minor cues, but this is the one where, like, I think you have to push the boundaries of strength too.
Yeah.
Because like we said, this one requires the most mental for us. So I think anything that requires that much mental strength is going to give you the most bang for your buck as far as a big, thick, dense back.
Yeah. Yeah. This is, like you said, this is the reason that you're here. And I guess it's important the reason I want to try to explain that too to people is because I feel like, especially for new people, they don't necessarily recognize that this is where you really need to unload. I feel like by the time I'm done with this exercise, there's like a weight lifted off my shoulders. The rest of the workout, it's a little bit easier after this to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. This is the one I think about from the end of the previous session to this session, is usually this exercise.
Yeah. And are you guys keeping a log on everything? Are you going in saying, okay, I got 365 for 10. I need to get it for 11 today or something like that?
Yeah. I don't live and die by the logbook as much as I used to.
Okay.
I have a mental log of where my stuff is. And if I post, I know I post most of my big lifts, so I can fall back on that too. But,
yeah.
There's just different variables. I think you get so in tune with your body that, if I didn't sleep, I'm not going to go in and try to set a record. I'm just going to try, maybe doing what I did last week as a PR. Because I'm at the point in my career where we talked about this earlier in the show, is I'm not going to do anything dumb that might put me on the shelf for months.
Yeah.
Just to beat my numbers that day. And that's what I tell people. I'm like, I'm not your body. I can't tell you how I can't tell how you're feeling. Only you know how you're truly feeling. Now, obviously, it's up to you to govern whether you're being a bitch or not. Mm-hmm. If I need to go in, if I'm just trying to get out of something because I'm a little tired or I don't feel good, like, I have a pretty good ability to call myself out. But there's days where I know, like, there's no way I'm doing a barbell row today. I slept for an hour.
Yeah.
So I think over time you learn how to be objective with yourself when it comes to that. But I do use a lot. I'm progressive overload is how I train. If I can add reps or strength, or the biggest one I think people lose sight of is the ability to critique their form. If the form wasn't good, don't go up weight or don't add reps. Just try to have better form.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one for me. And I started shooting video. Initially, I was like, hey, I'm going to post this set. And then after I started doing that, I started getting a better idea of, I could look at the video and see, like, oh, I didn't necessarily hold that for as long as I wanted to, or my negative didn't look as good as I felt like it did. And we've talked about this on some of the other programs, but I feel like having that video has been a critical tool. I shoot almost, especially being at the home gym here, I can just set up a tripod. I shoot all the main heavy lifts that I do now, and then I can review them back. Sometimes even if I'm doing like 2 sets, I'll even just hit play after that set and watch it before I do the next one, see if there's anything that I can improve. And we're talking today about the things that you can do to get more out of the exercises you're doing. For me, that's been a number one thing for me this year, I think, has been being able to look at it and critique right on the spot like that.
Yeah, no, that's a huge point. I'm glad you said that because Dusty and I will both do the same things. Because I think especially with a row, in your head, it feels like it's barely moving or your form was shit. And then you watch a video back and you're like, oh, that actually wasn't too bad. If anything, I probably could have done one more. But I thought mentally you think your form was so bad that you had to rack it.
Yeah.
And then that video becomes a teaching tool. So I'm glad you said that. I have all my clients, anybody that works with me, or if obviously I do in-person training, but if you don't train with me in person, I push them to send me videos. My WhatsApp is filled with training videos.
As is mine.
That's where I go in and I give them, I'll send voice memos back with critique on form, on cadence if the negatives were off, on intensity. If I think they had more reps, I'll tell them you had more reps, because any one of us can write someone a training program and give it to them, but how they execute the program we give them to them, and that's what gets the results, not the program itself.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing people need to take home, is that the split, the exercise routine, it matters to a degree, but the biggest thing that matters is how you're executing the movements that you're being given or that are on paper.
I totally agree. In fact, like at this point with a new client, I don't even, like if their split looks decent and that's what they're comfortable doing, I don't even want to change it. Instead, I'll just do what you're talking about, like let's look at your exercises and see what we can do to improve within that. And that way too, they don't have to kind of reinvent the whole thing. And it's like if you're already getting on a new diet and now I'm asking you to train differently, at least you have like some things that are going to be consistent in your life. That if you like being one of those guys where Monday's chest day, then you can still have that. But yeah, I think that's one thing where I think most all of us can get more out of our training is by improving our form. Like that's been, if I had to boil it all down, I would say that is one of the top 3 most critical changes that I've made this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, being hard on yourself when it comes to form. I think every one of us has more that we can be doing or areas we can improve, exercises that we can get better at, that can make our physiques better and make our performance better.
Yeah.
I think everyone wants to talk about, drugs or diet or this or that. It's like, get down to the X's and O's of your training. Take video all your sets. And I think it's hard. I get it. Like I remember when I started filming my training in a gym and I had a fucking tripod and I thought people were looking at me, and I get it. It's hard you think you're that guy, but now it's so common to do that you're not that guy. There's other people that are doing it too.
Yeah.
And if you're not a douche for wanting to all other sports watch game film back. They watch film to prepare. That's kind of what we're doing. We're watching our previous sets to prepare for our next sets and our next sessions.
Yeah.
So I think getting over the hurdle of filming yourself and seeing yourself is a huge step. And I can honestly say that all the clients I have that get over the hump and film all their stuff, they all make progress a lot faster than they would without it, because I'm able to get inside their training. I'm able to say we don't really need to do anything with your diet. We just need to work 10 times harder within your session and we're going to get results.
Yeah. And even if they're not working with you or working with someone, working with me, they're just seeing it for yourself. Like you said, you can see, you can look at it instantly and you can see where you can improve. But it's a matter, because I see that all the time. People will be like, hey, here's my set, but if you look after the 3rd rep, I start doing this. And it's like, oh, you figured that out because you watched the video yourself,
Yeah, you're forcing them to be cognizant of the exercise. So that's a huge tool. That's probably of everything we're going to talk about, that's probably the biggest thing for training, especially back, because back's not something you can see in the mirror.
Yeah.
When you train. So that's huge.
Yeah. So back to our workout then. I'm going to guess on a dumbbell row. You guys are going to do a barbell row. Where do you head from this one?
Well, with our new toys, we can probably jump to a hammer strength. Before, we might have just finished with another pullover variation or a pull down and called it a day.
Okay.
I mean, we go low volume for back, so this exercise takes a lot out of us. I mean, there's days where I'm like, I could leave the gym now. I am spent.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
Everything else is kind of just like frosting on the cake. So there's a pull down machine. It's the hammer strength ISO front pull down. Are you familiar with that one?
I'll have to find it. I'll get it. I'll find it.
Front pull down. It's a supinated grip.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You're pulling into you.
Yes.
I really love that one for lower lats, and because you're in a fixed position.
Okay.
I can arch my back, get that supinated grip, and drive my elbows down and back. And I tell myself and I tell clients to think of putting your elbow in your back pocket.
Yeah, yeah.
While contracting that lat. And you can feel that lat kind of spiral around right to where it attaches along your spine.
Yeah.
And just a full contraction. And so we'll hammer that one out for usually top set, back offset, same method. And then, so that's a movement we've been going to a lot lately is that front pull down.
I imagine at this point of the workout too, you don't need, in the fact of where you're at exercise, like you probably don't need that much of a warm up for these.
No, it's one or two, probably just one, depending on what the load is.
Okay.
I would say, yeah, just one. And because, yeah, you're already warmed up. Everything, I mean, you're taxed. So that's a good thing to point out is that warm-up sets for that first exercise are probably going to be 4, 5, 6. As you're progressing into your workout, the warm-up sets you'll need decrease. And that's a good thing to tell people is that if you don't need it, don't do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think they have to do X amount of sets for every exercise, and it's all. This is where it's like experience comes in, and you go by feel.
Right. Yeah, that's a big factor. And now it gets easier in a way too. If you're using a machine, you're already pretty fatigued. You guys have basically killed yourselves on your barbell row. You don't have to stabilize this as much, and this is where I like a machine. We talk a lot of times about, the pros and cons of machines. I feel like this is the pro where you're already fatigued in the workout and now you can continue to train hard. You can continue to pull a lot of weight and you don't have to worry about stabilizing it as much. Like trying to do another barbell row, you're not going to be able to hit what you already did,
No, and your body's not going to work with you at that point either.
Yeah, exactly.
You're taxed. I mean, like I said, that barbell row or that dumbbell row, that heavy weight it's a full body stimulus.
Yeah. I like this. So, I like where you guys are at, and I'm pretty much in the same place. I would probably, since I started with my pull down and then I went to my heavy row, I may do a secondary row. Like lately, I've been doing, I don't know what you call it, but like a chest supported dumbbell row where I'm pulling more to the upper back now. So the elbows are out a little bit more. I can kind of and I'll focus on a contraction. It's not nearly as heavy and I can get a good squeeze on each one of those reps. And that's because I don't have a machine. If I had a machine, I'd go to a machine for that, or I'd go to a pullover, like a cable pullover or something like that, dumbbell pullover.
I like that dumbbell, that variation you're talking about with the bench. I think that because I have trouble with the upper back, I have really thick lumbars.
Yeah.
So that completely takes the lower back out of it for me, and I can just focus on stretching that upper back, and then the contraction, getting that nice squeeze, and you can only use as much weight as you can row because you can't cheat on that one. You're in a fixed, you know what I mean? You're on that bench, so there's no way to really cheat the weight up.
Right.
So I like that variation.
I remember you and I were talking a while ago. I think I had shown you one of my back progress pictures, and you had said, you were like, hey, I think you could use more upper back development. You said that was an area that you were trying to develop. That's what you told me at the time. It may have been a year or so ago. Where are you at with that now?
I think it's it's definitely moving in the right direction. Honestly, it's hard. I need to see myself lean. I need to diet down to really see.
Yeah.
Because at this point, it's like I have a big back, big for me, but I need to see everything peeled down to see what's lacking and what's not.
Yeah.
That's just my own perception of myself. I've seen 1,200 off-season pictures. I haven't dieted in 3 years, so it's just at the point where I need to see. I need two things. I need to see myself dieted down, and I need to see myself in a lineup to see where I stand.
Yeah.
I think that's a key for me, is because I look at pictures from 2017, and it's like I don't even know that person anymore. That was, what I mean? I was a light heavyweight. Now I'm anywhere from 245 to 250, and there's no way I'll make light heavy. So
no.
It's hard to like be objective when I just haven't seen myself dieted down.
Yeah.
I still think it's weaker than other parts of my back, just based off of my strong parts of how I pull. But and we do a ton of RDLs and stuff too, so I do have a good degree of back thickness. I can always use more, but that upper area is something I've tried. I think you and I have talked about shrugs before. The standing in front of the bar versus or standing with the bar behind you, and shrugging. So that actually helps me activate my mid traps too. I'll do that from time to time.
That's right. I remember you saying that. I like dumbbells better than that.
Okay.
I like the dumbbells that they're in, they're kind of in alignment with my body versus in front of me. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit more awkward. They're okay, but I like that. Also, you know what else do you remember at Royal Oak Gym, they had that, like, I don't even know what you'd call it, but it was almost like a strongman unit. It was like a shrug. You could use it for shrugs. It was basically like a 3-sided box with handles on it. And
it was like I don't know what it's called either, but I know what you're talking about.
Almost like a farmer's carry type thing. But we used to use that out there. Those things are nice. And then that way too, my arms would be at my side versus being in front of me. I never really experimented with the behind the back too much.
For me, it works best on a Smith machine, just because the path is fixed and you don't have to worry about balancing a barbell. But I'm able to really get good scapular retraction if the bar is behind me versus in front of me.
Okay.
But I don't do a ton of shrugs. If I do them, like it might be something I do for potentiation work in the beginning, just to get that area moving. But yeah, so we're going from a row to a third movement, which is kind of like can be a variable based off what we're trying to target. Mm-hmm. And then from there, that might be a day for me.
Yeah.
The way we do things. Or there maybe a fourth exercise just for some blood volume if we're feeling it that day.
Yeah, that's where I would finish is sometimes it'll just be those first 2 exercises and then that's it. I do train biceps on my back day. So I do, a pull day. So I will do an arm exercise, but I don't do a lot for arms. I'm actually considering adding more volume in for arms, but that's another conversation. I mean, we're focusing mainly on back here. But regardless, it's a secondary thought. You know what I mean? It's not like okay, now we start arms and the whole process begins again. It's like several sets and that's it.
Right. No, arm training is. It's not my favorite, but we recently just added an arm day again just to give it its own focus, because after back, I mean, it's hard to get into biceps.
That's kind of what I was thinking about too, was maybe just an arm specific day. And it's almost kind of, to me, that's almost like an active rest day. It's like,
absolutely, yeah.
You're not going to be taxing your central nervous system too much with that.
Right. It's just kind of a ego day, pump everything up, feel good about it, and then you're not taxed for your next day.
Yeah. So I guess I hope this paints a picture for people that may help them in some way or another. I imagine that some of our listeners, to them, this is exactly what they do. To some of them, it might be different, but I feel like having walked through this case study with you, I'm hoping that some people learn something. If people could pick up one thing out of this, that would be pretty cool, Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think the hardest thing to do is reach people with what we're talking about. I mean, because it's hard to write a post about this and go into depth because you can't convey emotion. We can't do our little images we're doing with the screen.
Right.
But this is like a virtual seminar kind of, and this is just our own experiences. I think other people probably have their own insights that they can add to, or maybe they can collaborate with what we're providing. So as long as we can help people in some way possible, I think we did our job.
Yeah. And I feel like I've learned some stuff here too, because listening to you gets me thinking about things in a slightly different way, and explaining things to you kind of gets me to solidify some of my own thoughts,
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I was just thinking one thing people can take from this, if you're not filming your sets, absolutely, that's one thing you can start doing with your training that I guarantee will make you a better bodybuilder.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
You don't have to post any of them if you don't want to, but just for your records.
Yeah. So if people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Instagram. So Stiles2.
All right. I'll have that down in the
Instagram
notes.
handle.
Cool. And what are you guys training next? You had today was off, you said, right?
Today was off. Yesterday was quads.
Okay.
Tomorrow will be probably delts.
Okay. You guys do delts on their own, huh?
Yeah, we've been our split's hasn't been cemented in for a while, but we'll try to do push days together, and then Dusty and I both have like shoulder issues, so separating chest and delts actually mitigates that. And
okay.
Then, so chest, lately it's been 3 exercises done. Delts, maybe 4, and then we're not pressing on delt days anymore.
Oh, no kidding.
Most part. Every now and then we'll throw it in, but for the most part, it's just a lot of side laterals and rear laterals and front raises.
Okay.
A lot more blood volume. It's a lot different than the training I just described for back.
Yeah.
It's going to be some more sets. It's still heavy weight, but the rep ranges are higher. Just a kind of a different approach, just based off of, I think the back and legs are something you can really, really push loads on.
Yeah.
And then your presses, but I think raises and arm movements for the most part, you don't need to focus as much on the load versus like the contraction and the stretch and all that.
I agree.
Hypertrophy focus.
I agree. And I feel like you're already doing all those heavy loads in the primary chest and back movements. So, if I were to go back and change anything, I would probably have done less shoulder pressing, because that was probably it was my strongest exercise for a while. And I got to the point where I could kick up the 130s for sets, and it was an ego thing. You know what I mean? It's like there was no reason that I needed to do that. I still shoulder press, but I'm more of the approach of trying to make it harder through taking shorter rest breaks on my shoulder day or on my shoulder work, and going for higher reps than I used to.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'm kind of at I don't want to call it a permanent plateau with shoulder pressing, but I need to get more work done on my shoulder to feel confident enough to progress in weight again. Because, another form of progressive overload is being able to come to the gym session after session after session and give the same amount of effort.
Yeah.
If we we go all out and do a heroic rep on shoulder day, and then, now I can't, my pull day is affected.
Yeah.
My leg day is affected because I can't have weight on my back. And it's in your head. You're living with something and you're thinking about that in your training. So that's a form of progressive overload in itself, is just stringing together workouts. If there's an issue, get it fixed. Don't try to fit a square peg in a round hole. If it's not there on a given day, or an exercise just doesn't work with you, don't force it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's something people can take home. Is like, I did that when I was younger. On the hack squat especially, I remember just saying or thinking, I'm just going to go down and I'm going to bungee cord it all the way back up until I can beat the logbook. And it caused me. I didn't train legs for a couple of months at one point just because of that.
No kidding. I didn't realize you had to take time off legs.
Yeah, no, I've been in and out of. I've seen probably 5 or 6 PTs over the last 3 years.
Okay.
The one I have here, Dusty referred me when I moved here, and instantly I started seeing him weekly, and then now I just see him for maintenance once a month or twice a month.
Right on.
A lot of dry needling work, a lot of fascia work, just stuff to keep me moving.
Yeah. Well, if our viewers and listeners enjoy this and they had anything else, any topics that you wanted Tommy and I to get together and tackle, I'm sure Tommy would be up for it. I love talking about this stuff, so I feel like it would be fun to dive into some other topics if anybody was interested, man. It sound like a good idea?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can probably hit every body part.
All right, guys. Well, listen, thanks for hanging with us, and like I said, I hope you pick something up out of it. For another episode here at Think Big, Bodybuilding Media and Advices Radio, I'm here with Tommy Stiles. I'm Scott Mcnally, guys. We'll see you soon. Thanks a lot, Tommy. Appreciate your time, man.
Thanks for having me on.
All right.